Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Inking Out Loud. Today, Drew and I, and only Drew and I, are going to be discussing the first half of Crown of Swords, the 7th volume in Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time series. I'm your host, Rob Santos, and I am joined, as I just said, by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey. Drew, what's up, dude?
How's it going, everybody?
And for now, I'm going to pass it off to you, my man, so you can give us a recap of what exactly we've read for this week.
Yeah, well, first off, I wish we had a little, time wonkiness in this book since you said good evening, everybody, and we're recording this in the morning,
Yeah.
And this episode is going live.
You're right. Normally it's actually closer to evening by the time that we're recording this on my end here in Ontario, yeah.
But, our schedule was a little strange this week, so we had to get a much earlier start. But so A Crown of Swords, first half. So today we're going to be covering the beginning of the book up through chapter 21, Swovan Night. And that gives us, some actually pretty crazy stuff going on. I kind of forgot how hard this hits the ground running,
Yeah.
Obviously, we kick things off with the aftermath of Dumai's Wells, where Rand is struggling to kind of cope with what just happened to him. He chooses a few Ashaman to accompany him as kind of his personal guard going forward, including one Corlin Deshiva, which is an interesting choice. And he and Perrin and the rest of their group travel back to Cairhien, where they find that Alvear, at the behest of some of those Tower Aes Sedai, has usurped the throne of Cairhien in a very short-lived coup. And Rand strips her of her titles and exiles her, whereupon she decides she can't live with that and hangs herself. Perrin and Rand are kind of striking sparks. Perrin doesn't want to do what Rand wants him to do, namely go lead the armies in Ilion. And so they have some disagreements there. Meanwhile, in Saladar, Egwene is sort of finding her feet, consolidating her power. She is determined not to just be a figurehead, and with Swan's help starts maneuvering around, figuring out the political currents in Saladar. She rebuffs an attempted blackmailing by Nicola and Arianna, and in turn, Egwene blackmails Nisau and Morel for what they're doing with Lan, and extracts oaths of fealty from them. And she also has a brief meeting with the Wise Ones, where she kind of realizes how the Wise Ones really feel about Aes Sedai at this point, and she asks them to kind of tone it down, so that there's a little more of an opportunity. She also tells them she will not send Aes Sedai to help Rand, and she doesn't want Rand to know that she is the Amyrlin. So that's kind of the Saladar wrap-up, and then lastly we have the events of the Ebudar storyline, where Elaine and Nynaeve are trying to figure out what they're looking for, and they meet with the Seafolk and find out about the Bowl of the Winds. The Black Aja are in Ebudar, as well as Samael making a quick stop. The Shadow is very present in the city, looking for a cache of Angreal and Tur-Angreal. And Phaleon and Ispin are the Black Sisters there, who are interrogating and killing wise women. And meanwhile, Matt is trying to enjoy his time in Ebudar, but is dealing with some weirdness from Queen Tylan, as well as the ever-present scourge of Elaine and Nynaeve, although he makes a new friend at the end of this sequence in Brigida.
Yeah, he does.
So then that's where we left off, was at the end of Swovan Night, where Matt and Brigida get drunk together.
Yeah. What an intro to this. Well, not an intro, I should say. What a first half of the book. But this is something I've been waiting to say since we started the beginning of the Wheel of Time. Actually, since we started this podcast, honestly. Book 7 of the Wheel of Time is really, really often underestimated in how strong Jordan's narrative voice is. Especially as he begins what he has to tell in this book. And I want to dive straight into the prologue in our style discussion here, because there's quite a few things actually I have to discuss about the prologue. I think even more than I did for Lord of Chaos, which had me, waxing rhapsodic about that prologue, if I remember correctly. But he starts this one, he being Jordan, like he did in the Fires of Heaven, with another viewpoint from Elida, right?
Uh-huh.
We get this startling look at like her accelerating descent into madness, and she sends first off, she sends 50 sisters and what was it, 1,000, maybe 2,000 guardsmen to deal with the Black Tower. Might have been less than that. Might have been like 500 guardsmen.
It's fewer than that. Yeah, it's actually a pretty small group that she sends.
Might have only been a couple hundred. We see the magnitude of her hubris. She's commanding this lead architect to not only build her a palace, but one apparently as taller than the White Tower itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then as the readers, we're sitting in there, we're getting comfortable with like the idea of, yeah, this bitch has finally lost her goddamn mind, like entirely. Jordan chooses this exact moment to throw this foretelling at us, where Elida says, and I quote, "The White Tower will be whole again, except for remnants cast out and scorned, whole and stronger than ever. Rand Althor will face the Amerlin seat and know her anger. The Black Tower will be rent in blood and fire, and sisters will walk its grounds. This I foretell." What a blow that we got from far left field there. And I wanted to get what you thought about that one, Drew, and how Jordan kind of chose to play with expectation.
Yeah, so I really don't remember what my opinion of that was when I first read this book, because it was just so long ago.
Right, yeah.
But my gut tells me that I didn't totally buy it. It felt a little wishful thinking on Elida's part, especially knowing what we did at the end of Lord of Chaos about how crazy the Ashaman have gotten, how powerful they are now, and
in such a short time.
Where Taim was able to bring like 200 Ashaman, maybe not fully trained, but certainly effective, to a battlefield after just a couple of weeks, and it just didn't jive with this foretelling in the way that Elida frames it. And Elida has already, I remember this much at least, that she's had a few foretellings that we know about in the series so far, and she always misinterprets her foretellings. Her at least to an extent. So her kind of life driving force foretelling was the one about how the royal family of Andor is the key to the last battle. And when she had that foretelling, the Trakand house was not the royal family of Andor. It was Mantiar.
Yeah, Mantiar.
And what that foretelling meant basically was like, look, this is where the Dragon Reborn is coming from. But Elida misinterprets that. And yes, Elaine and like Gawain and Galad end up being important, but they're not like the key to the last battle the way Rand is the
points.
Key. Yeah, exactly. And so we know that she has a propensity for misinterpreting her own foretellings, and she has this one which comes at kind of like the height of her megalomania, and you're like, okay, this really seems like something a little far-fetched. She must be misinterpreting it.
You see, a lot like you, I don't recall my first impression coming out of this prologue, or this scene in particular as we're discussing, because when I read it, I would have been 13 years old, maybe 14. But I do want to say that I was already kind of on to Jordan in that manner, because at this point, we still, like, okay, we knew that Elida had some big foretellings. I think at this point already knew what that sort of meant, though, like her original foretelling about the royal line of Andor being the key to winning, or victory, I should say, in the last battle. At this point in Book 7, we already know about, like, T-Grade. We already know about what happened there, and how Rand descended from that line. At this point, though, we really don't know what this foretelling is about, because, I mean, this is something that happens in Book 13, for the most part. Also, and I will note this, the only concrete name that we get is Rand Althor during that foretelling. She doesn't say the Amerlin Elida. She says the Amerlin seat. She says the Black Tower will be rent in blood and fire. The only solid concrete name, of course, we got was Rand Althor, and I think that played a big part in Elida's total underestimation of what was going to actually happen, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. But I also wanted to talk about a different scene in this prologue. Unless there's anything else about Elida you wanted to cover before we fire forward?
I do. I want to talk about her interactions with Alvear in here.
Oh, with Alvear.
Because this is really important going forward. This sort of like the development of this tug of war between the two of them, and how this scene is like a major win for Elida. She receives news that the mission was successful and Randiss captured. She has this foretelling that seemingly, predicts Elida's triumph. Alvear is very shaken by this. But because of that, because the way their relationship develops, where there are these just dramatic events that shift the power between them, it escalates so much faster because of that. Because the blows to each other's ego are so big. And this is kind of one of those situations where Aes Sedai kind of arrogance plays a big part in it. These are women who are so used to being in utter control that when they lose control or when they're uncertain, they really lash out, And we're going to see that continuing going forward.
Yeah, when they lose control, one would argue that you can actually get a greater glimpse of who they really are underneath all of that Aes Sedai calm and serenity.
Mm-hmm.
And with Alvear, it's not a very nice person, not a very pretty person. But unless I miss my guess, going forward, this prologue here is the first time in the Wheel of Time series that we get to witness a scene that's already passed, but this time through the eyes of somebody else. And I speak, of course, of the Savannah point of view, as she participates in or I should say, avoids participating in the Battle of Dumai's Wells. Am I right that we haven't had a scene quite like this in this style, where we have something in the past, but we're watching it through somebody else's eyes right now?
I believe you are correct. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, at least.
This represents a whole new style of writing that Jordan, and unfortunately, in the opinion of many I've spoken to, he gets a little too comfortable with, particularly in the 10th volume for Crossroads of Twilight. But I just wanted to highlight that there, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong in thinking. I think this is the first time we've had that in this series, so I definitely wanted to run it by you.
Yeah, and I think he handles it pretty well in this book and in a couple of others, but like you said, not so much in Crossroads of Twilight, and that's something we'll really dig into when we get there.
Definitely.
But in this book, there are a couple of these scenes pretty early on. There's the obvious Savannah one, but also we get the freeing of Magedion from Egwene's point of view, where she feels the touch of a man who can channel on the Adam, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on here?" And then she goes and investigates, but so things like that are they're more interesting to us rather than jarring, the way some things in Crossroads of Twilight and Towers of Midnight are, where you're like, "Whoa, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't line up," or whatever, or you're bored. As is the case in Crossroads of Twilight, where you're like, I already know what happens. But here, it gives us more information. It gives us like an interesting new perspective on events, and especially with the case of Savannah, where this is such in a manner, a triumph for the good guys, where the Shido, who've been just a huge thorn in Rand's side for the last 2-3 books, are broken, and getting to see the panic and the confusion and the fear on the side of the bad guys is a fun reading experience for us, right? So it's almost like this vindicating thing, Robert Jordan getting the opportunity to write this perspective.
Yeah, lends context, I suppose. Another thing that Jordan did with this prologue, I'm still not done. I have 2 more points that I want to discuss with you here. Another thing he did was continue and end something that he started in the last prologue with the man Pedro Nile. And I have to say, honestly, this is one of the deaths in the Wheel of Time series that impacted me most on my first read-through. And this is not because I found Nile a particularly relatable or empathetic or even, honestly, even likable character, but because of how heavy and ominous this moment was. Pedro Nile is, or was, one of the 5 great captains, and one of the most powerful and influential men in the entirety of the world. To see him slain like this, with no warning,
right,
and to see that he failed to protect this message, was intimidating on the part of the reader.
Yeah.
And it's about this point in the series, I think, that Jordan is, he's really showing us. He says, you think you see where this is going, but boy, are you wrong. And I thought it was fantastic. What do you think, man?
I agree. I do remember the first time I read this, I was shocked by just like how, because Omerna was framed before this as kind of like a bumbling, ineffective, idiot. And
Jordan set him up to be dismissed as a threat. Exactly.
Yeah, and then he comes in and just kills him. And then you find out immediately, oh, he was still a bumbling idiot and he was being manipulated. And this was all, the doing of Valda and Asanawa. And you're like, oh man, okay. So Niall just got totally played.
Yeah.
So
and it sucks because I found him to be pretty cool. Obviously he had a few character flaws.
A few.
Namely keeping more gays, his whole stance against the White Tower, his setting up of Randall Thor as not only a false dragon, but you're trying to unite nations against him. He was doing a lot of things that the reader, obviously is not going to champion
right.
or root for. But still, seeing him slain like this, somebody who is as wise, somebody who is as sharp and respected as Pedro Nile, just to see this out of left field assassination by Omerna, it was really, really, like I said before, and I'll say it again, it was an intimidating choice that Jordan made to throw that at his readers. I think, especially as a prologue, that really sets the scene for what he's going to be doing forward in this book. But the last thing I wanted to talk about is another thing that Jordan does at the beginning of this volume. And this is something I very, very briefly touched upon in Starsight, but I'm not going to get into spoilers, obviously. But this is when an author plays with scale. Our prologue starts with our big, behind-the-scenes, threatening big players. Like we have Elida, we have Pedro Nile, and they're saying very important things. But then we dive into chapters 1 and 2, particularly chapter 2. Where Jordan chooses to focus on the micro scale, delving directly into our main characters, into the aftermath of Dumai's Wells. We have chapter 2, which, as an aside, I actually made note to mention that chapter 2 of A Crown of Swords might be one of my favorite single chapters in the entirety of the Wheel of Time.
Really? That's the Butcher's Yard, right?
The Butcher's Yard, that's that one. It's focusing inwards on Rand and Perrin, and the scene that really sticks out to me is where Perrin finds Rand immediately after counting the dead maidens, and he's memorizing their faces. Yep. And how it presents it as this flashback scene, the sequence, the sheer beauty of everything used to compose that scene was phenomenal. I do want to, and I will be touching more on this scene when we get to Perrin's character in our character discussion.
I really agree. Actually, it's the sort of quiet writing. It's not the big bombastic epic battles, but it's something that I have started to appreciate more and more just in the last year. And I've started kind of seeking out more fantasy written like this. It was part of the reason why I loved A Memory Called Empire, for instance. I loved the way Arkady Martine could construct these sort of quiet, personal, intimate scenes with tense stakes for the characters that don't necessarily need big space battles or epic magic, things like that. And then I read another book this summer, A Shadow in Summer by Daniel Abraham, the first in the Long Press Quartet. Mentioned. And that book, there's basically no action in the entire book, but it is phenomenal, and it's probably the best or second best book I read this year. Like, it's...
Wow.
And this scene reading in here reminded me a lot of some of the scenes in A Shadow in Summer. And how the stakes, the personal stakes for the mentality and emotions of our characters are highlighted and so beautifully written about.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. You want to jump into our character discussion?
Sure.
Start with Rand?
Yeah, let's start with Rand.
Cool.
Yeah, kick it off.
Okay, so in the aftermath of Dumai's Wells, I gotta say, Rand's character is already being tested again. Like, he really doesn't get a lot of downtime to relax. He starts off in a lot of, I wrote down, I called it spiritual pain.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to terms with how many men, and particularly women, obviously, being Randall Thor, being from the Two Rivers, raised as he was, just died for him. But on the flip side, we get to see some of the strongest power plays that he ever gets at the beginning of this volume. There's that whole, cupping Alana's chin.
Yeah.
Heal me, The entire dethroning of Colliver. just reaching up, grabbing the crown, breaking it with one hand, reforming it with one power as a point of like intimidation, laying her unconscious form after she faints across the ground in front of the throne. That symbolic imagery, wow. As hard as it is to see Rand like this is some of my favorite Rand that we ever get to see in the entire series, dude. What did you think?
That particular scene with Colvir where Rand comes in and just like the shock, they're like, oh crap, like, and then Rand is so just like confident, ruthless. He's like, you messed up, and I'm gonna show you just how badly you miscalculated here. And yeah, like you said, I mean, the imagery of breaking the crown and remaking it, and then like holding court with her unconscious body right there, like it's so great. It's a masterful scene on the part of Robert Jordan.
Oh, absolutely. God. Everything about that scene was just so the tension. That tension that you could feel, not just through the page, but in my case, I was listening to the audiobook at work again. The tension that's just palpable. You can see that scene, you can encapsulate it in your head, you can picture it, and it's just so dead quiet in that room. And I think carrying off this scene as he did from Perrin's point of view was masterful, because Perrin has added context that the rest of our characters at this point aren't going to have. Mm-hmm. He can smell emotions, right? Granted, a lot of the narrative is tainted by his worry for Fail, which I'm just so done with already. And going forward, I'm not excited for.
Right.
But it was really, really cool still. And let's see here. Going on with Rand's character, sorry, I just got lost in my notes here. Yes. Jordan continues to test Rand, though, and this is something I've been so excited to get into, particularly in the first half of Crown of Swords here, the introduction of Cadsuane. Or Cadswain. How do you pronounce that one?
Did you just say Cadswane?
Cadsuane. It sounds like Japanese, doesn't it?
It's Cadswain.
I think the audiobooks do both of them. Okay, I'll
really?
go with Cadswain.
The audiobooks say Cadswane?
I'm Cadsuane, but I'm not. Hold on, don't quote me on that. I
what?
feel like I've heard that before.
Pat is shaking his head at that. He's saying they do not say that.
I like the 2-syllable version.
I've listened to the audiobooks and they always say Cadsway.
Do they really? Where have I heard Cadsuane?
I have no idea.
I don't know. Anyway, 2 syllables, not 4. Let's go with that. Yeah. But she tests his patience and she's testing his arrogance. You know, and Rand is like, he's totally left reeling from this encounter. And then in comes Idrian Tarson to break the news about what happened to Herod Fell. You know? Wow, what a bummer.
Yeah, and then Rand and Min get it on.
Yeah, so that's something I wanted. That's my last wrapping up point for Rand's character here. I wanted to say also, Rand, congrats on the sex. Yeah. Right? But there's something I noticed during the writing of these notes that we haven't actually acknowledged yet, Drew. I want to say congrats, Min.
Yeah.
You know, and for that matter, since we forgot, congrats, Avienda, because so often it seems like those of us wielding penises sometimes forget the other side of this exchange, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, especially because so many of these scenes are from, like, Rand's point of view or Perrin's point of view. It's easier for us to identify with, like, the current point of view character than, you know... But yeah, that is a really good point. But I do have one more thing I just wanted to bring up with Rand, and that is how, even though I like a lot of the things that Rand is doing in this section, I like, you know, he's really badass, he's got some cool things he does with Colvir and stuff like that. He's also a huge jerk to Perrin.
Yeah.
And
he is. He really is.
You know, like his insistence, his hounding of Perrin, like you need to go to Ilion, you need to go to Ilion, all this stuff, like it's definitely frustrating seeing Rand, like this is probably where I have the most criticism of Rand in how he acts as a leader, where he just he's acting like Nynaeve here, almost like he's trying to browbeat people into doing what he wants them to do, and
I hadn't considered it.
Yeah, it's not something I think you can write off as like, oh, the madness, like you can do with some of the later things Rand does. This is just Rand not really knowing how to properly act in his role as a ruler. And he is learning still. I mean, he had to learn some harsh lessons about that in Lord of Chaos with, like, Mangan, for instance. But he still doesn't have a full grasp of how to properly interact and delegate, tasks with his closest supporters and advisors and generals and things. So that's frustrating to me.
Yeah, I was definitely frustrated with Rand quite a bit, and I was really championing Perrin during their confrontation. Over what's going to happen to the Aes Sedai. I was cheering him on there. Perrin looking him in the eyes and telling him, "No, I'm not going to let you do this. I'm not going to let you hurt them." And Rand is pretty much calling his bluff, like, "You're gonna get in my way," and Perrin is like, "Oh, absolutely. You better count on it, there, bud."
Yeah.
It was really, really important for both of those characters that they set those boundaries with each other. They grew up together. They have been friends. They've been in the together since day one. But at the same time, they have diverged so much as people that establishing where these dividing lines are is very, very important going forward. Not only for their relationship, but with how Jordan's going to treat them going forward as well. So I just wanted to nod my head there towards that scene. That was tough to read, but it was really, really, I don't know, I guess I'll say breathtaking. That was a cool scene.
Yeah. So let's move on to Egwene.
Egwene, okay. I actually didn't write anything down about Egwene this time around. I was still already getting frustrated with her. Okay, it sounds like you have enough for both of us, my friend. Let's get it off.
Yeah.
Get it off? Let's get it started.
This is where, like, there's a hard turn in Egwene's character development. Where,
yeah, I figured you were going to have something to say about... Actually, I think I know where you're going. Sorry, go ahead.
Now that she's Amyrlin, and she is determined to be an Amyrlin, not a figurehead. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's an admirable choice. Like, it would be very easy for her to just buckle under and be like, all right, well, I'm in a terrible position. I guess I got to just roll with the blows. No, she doesn't do that. She's determined, and she uses the resources around her to help her kind of solidify power. But, and this is a huge but, what she does in this section with extracting oaths, she blackmails Nisau and Morel into swearing fealty to her. And this is an unbreakable oath because these are Aes Sedai who have sworn on the oath rod. Now, like, stow that in your back pocket because...
For the Gathering Storm, perhaps?
Oh, for way more than the Gathering Storm.
Oh.
Most of the outward-facing policy decisions Egwene is going to make as Amyrlin of just the Saladar contingent are purely predicated on how wrong it is for other people to do exactly what Egwene just did.
Yeah, that's a whole big part of her argument against Elida later in the series.
And Rand.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
And I hadn't considered that part of it too. I'm only considering it like her direct struggle against the opposing Amyrlin, the one in the tower. Of course, she condemns Elida for just that. She's like, "You have sisters swearing to you and not to the throne. That is so terrible. How dare you?" Shut the fuck up, Egwene.
Yeah, it's... This is where Egwene really, really, really starts getting on my nerves. Like, there are things she does in the earlier books. I mean, like, I went on the huge rant in Fires of Heaven, things like that, like some pretty bad things she does, but they're intermittent. They're not just, like, a constant stream of things. I mean, you think about how some of our more recent episodes, like on Lord of Chaos, I was saying, like, I enjoyed reading about Egwene there. I didn't have any problem with her there. Stuff in, like, The Dragon Reborn, I thought she was sort of... she's being catty, but she had a point, for how she was interacting with Nynaeve at points, and things like that, where I'm not consistently frustrated with her as a character until A Crown of Swords and going forward. And it is in large part due to her, the foundations she lays in this book for a whole bunch of hypocrisy going forward.
A whole bunch of hypocrisy going forward. I don't think I could have stated that any better myself.
Yeah. So that said, it is also like amusing. There's a lot of dramatic irony in these Egwene chapters, in the Saladar chapters, where they're trying to figure out like what happened with Meganian, and they're like, oh no, there's a male channeler, who did this, and they're like investigating. They're like, did anybody see anybody around Merrigan's tent? And a couple of people like, I saw Halima,
Yeah, but the men, they totally would notice Halima.
Yeah, right.
Totally not important.
And oh my gosh, it's just like it's right there. But of course, we know it's right there. But nobody would ever expect a woman to be channeling Saidin. As far as they know, it's not even possible. Like, so it's Robert Jordan dangling this juicy bit of irony out there for us, and
thumbing his nose at us from 20, 25 years in the past.
Yeah. So, but I think it's kind of the eggwing that I needed to get off my chest, and again we'll address that in future episodes when it comes back up. Yeah. But I want to just briefly touch on Nicola and Ariana and how obnoxious they are. I didn't like them from the get-go. The very first time I read The Fires of Heaven and met them, I was like, I'm not fans of them, then they just get so much worse here. I had hopes for Nicola when I first read this. I was like, I could see her like maybe having like a good character shift, and she just does not. But yeah. So that's the end of my like Saladar group notes, and I think that brings us to Ebudar.
Okay, I was actually going to discuss Perrin before we move
on. Oh, you want to talk Perrin more? Okay.
Yeah, no, I did mention Perrin briefly, but that was more in context with his interaction with Rand. I haven't really had a chance to discuss Perrin himself and why I'm getting a little frustrated.
Okay.
Right here in Chapter 1, there's a moment, and it might be the first moment where Perrin does something that truly pisses me off. And I've been pretty sympathetic, I think, towards Perrin up until this point. But I think there comes a moment. Okay, so there's this moment when Aram, the tinker turned lost puppy turned pseudo blade master, who he just nonchalantly suggests that the Aes Sedai captives should be murdered, to which Perrin just responds with more or less, "Shut up, Aram."
Yeah.
Like, really, Perrin? No digging, no admonishment, no reason. No wonder this guy goes dark. Like, this here is the moment, Drew. This is the moment where I think where Perrin really fucked up with Aram. This is his chance to notice that Aram was wandering from the path and to correct him. That because of this massive blind spot he has with everything when he thinks Fail is in danger, he doesn't deign to notice. He just dismisses this problem entirely. What do you think, man?
Yeah, so I think what it comes down to with Perrin here is that he, because he has his particular struggles, leadership being chiefly among them, where he doesn't see himself as a leader. The flip side of that is he doesn't see himself as a role model, and he totally is a role model for Aram.
Absolutely.
And I kind of argued for Perrin, for the benefit of Perrin earlier, Aram isn't Perrin's responsibility.
Yeah, I think it was Jared and I who were thinking, he might be a little bit though, but you made a good case. He probably isn't. Really.
He's not his responsibility, but he does have some responsibility. Like he's so unaware here that he doesn't need to babysit Aram or anything like that. But when you have moments like this, these teaching moments, like you said, it does behoove Perrin to step in and straighten Aram out, because clearly Aram is like you said, like going off the deep end here. He's like, let's just kill him. Like, and that's something that even though Perrin is avoiding leadership and is sort of unaware of the demands of leadership upon him, this is something that is so antithetical to Perrin, the idea of just like killing relatively harmless women, like prisoners,
helpless women. I think that's the part. Is it's helpless women, right?
Yeah, like it's such a not Perrin thing to do that he should recognize and correct, right? Like that's the natural thing. Like You don't just say, no, we're not doing that. You say, whoa, dude, what the hell? No, of course we're not going to do that.
Let's investigate. Let's figure out why the hell he said something like this. Let's explain to him why that is so fucked up. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
But no, it's just like, okay, shut up. I have more important things to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, oh my god, Perrin. There comes a moment later. I think it's in Knife of Dreams when Perrin is internally thinking about Aram and how he... No, it might have been actually in the Sanderson trilogy at the end there, where he's thinking about Aram and how all of the mistakes he made. And I remember my first read-through at that point going, what are you talking about? Why do you have to take responsibility for everybody else's screw-ups? But no, actually, if I think back to moments like this, Perrin should have felt bad. He did have a reason to feel guilty.
Yeah, I mean, there's reason to feel guilty.
Yep. Not to say it's entirely his responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
But he definitely has a few things to atone for.
And I will say, like, as Perrin continues to struggle with the fact of his leadership role, I do think that while I'm frustrated with Rand and how he approaches Perrin, trying to convince him, like, just telling him, like, dude, you're going to Ilion, and Perrin's like, nope, no, I'm not, you know. I think they're both kind of off base here, because if Perrin could come to grips with his role a little more as like an important leader for the forces of the light and what his Ta'veren nature is, he would be more amenable to doing this. You know, he would be more prepared to say, all right, Rand, let's work together and figure out a way that we can, like, you know, make this work. Rather than...
I bet Fail would be on board. All Rand has to do is approach Fail with that. I'm sure she'd jump at the chance to watch Perrin lead tens, if not hundreds of thousands.
Oh, yeah. And even though, you know, Perrin wouldn't actually be, like, leading them into battle, because, as we know with, like, the retrospect of having read these books before, that whole huge giant army in the plains of Moredo is a fake out. Rand just wants Matt or Perrin there because he wants Samael to be convinced that that's where the hammer is going to fall, not with what Rand is working on with Bashir. So... Exactly.
And I still have one more thing about Perrin I want to talk about. Actually, before I get into that, though, I did want to mention this one positive thing I have to say on the front of Fail. I'm pretty sure this happened. This had to have happened in this part. Yeah, sorry. I'm thinking back like 4 weeks in my listening to the audiobook here. There's that scene where Perrin just sort of enters. Rand enters Perrin in Fael's rooms, and then Perrin has to break. I think he breaks away from the kiss. And Fael looks, she just glares down the Dragon Reborn. She says, I apologize, my Lord Dragon, for not hearing your knock.
Yeah.
I just had a giddy little clapping, squeaking glee moment there. I was like, yes. Somebody take him down a couple pegs, man. Somebody go Fael. I was actually totally on board with her.
Yeah, that scene, just everything around that scene is sort of the epitome of where I was frustrated with Rand in this book.
Yeah, you get to see him all. You actually get to see Rand discomfited a little bit. Discomfited.
Yeah. Discomfited. Yeah.
That word. Thank you very much. Because he just kind of shuffles his feet and he's like, "Oh, sorry, that's on me. This might be." Sorry, guys. But there's another really cool thing I noticed from Perrin's point of view this time around. I briefly touched on it earlier during our discussion of the first chapter here, or the second chapter especially. But for the first time, so Perrin is smelling Rand's emotions, right? And he's unnerved by how quickly these emotions are changing, flashing from one to another in rapid succession. And I originally took this thought as, nobody's emotions change that quickly. Rand's going crazy. But it wasn't until now that something else occurred to me. And I considered he might be first smelling Rand's emotions and then in rapid succession smelling Luz Theron's emotion. And I wouldn't have thought of this unless we had just discussed in our last episode in Lord of Chaos 3 about Mirana reading Rand's note before leaving Camelin. And I thought, there's a possibility that she got a glimpse of Luz Theron's handwriting. This isn't so much a point about Perrin as it is just a cool thing to notice from his point of view.
Yeah, that's something I've never even considered before. Yeah. That is really interesting.
Isn't that so terrifying to consider? Not only is Rand's handwriting showing his and starting to show Luz Theron's handwriting bleeding through, but now, Perrin is also potentially smelling, if that's what's happening here. He's smelling Rand's emotions and Luz Theron's emotions.
Right, yeah.
That's just creepy.
It is. Man.
Yeah. So, that's everything I had to discuss with Perrin.
Okay. Well, let's move to Ebudar. and let's
Okay.
talk Matt.
Matt, my man.
I love Matt in this book. This is where Matt really becomes his own character. He becomes my absolute favorite character. When he's now completely out of Rand's shadow, he's doing his own thing. He has his own agency now. And he's just so much freaking fun. Like, and the way Robert Jordan writes his chapters, where we go back and forth from these, like, amusing, almost whimsical, like, oh, we're at the races and gambling and things like that, to, like, oh, crap, there's Millie Skane. Like, you know...
There she is.
And then, oh, Jakeem Carradine is here and has, like, a cohort of Dark Friends with him. And, you know, and then we switch points of view, and Samael shows up, and you're like, oh my gosh, like... Matt is trying to just enjoy himself in Abu Dar, but all of this crap is about to come crashing down on him.
He is still Taviri.
Yeah, and then...
Doesn't matter what.
And then it moves from that to him going to the palace and dealing with freaking Tylan. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah.
And then it moves back from that to him going to the Wandering Woman, and I just want to point out one of my all-time favorite lines Robert Jordan ever wrote. And I'm going to read this because I have the quote here. When he walks into the Wandering Woman. Harnan, a lantern-jawed Terran file leader with a crude tattoo of a hawk on his left cheek, was berating Corrivan. Don't care what the flaming fish seller said, you goat-spawned toad. Use your bloody club and don't go accepting flaming challenges just because... He cut off when he saw Matt and tried to look as he had not been saying what he had. Like, yeah. I love the language. I love the, like, you know, the interplay between them. And then Matt's like, if Matt asked, it would turn out Corrivan had slipped and fallen on his own dagger or some such foolery Matt was supposed to pretend to believe. Like, and so he just ignores it, doesn't even address it. He's just like, you know.
How insane is this goddamn city? I again, this is a point that I made several episodes ago now about how every consecutive city that ours or some of our main characters travel to just gets more and more and more dangerous.
Yeah.
Not just with like unrest, but just with society itself and the way they comport themselves in everyday life. It's insane. Like, we have Bestland, who is feeling really pissed off when he first meets Matt. He's all grumpy when he's talking to his mom because he just got into a knife fight. He just had to kill a man, and now he's got to, you know, pay dues to the man's wife. And it's just like, what are these people? What are they living in? This is a man who just got killed by a knife in his adult years. He's got a wife. We know he's got a wife.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably got children and stuff like that. But because of what I assume to be one wrong look at one wrong time, this man lost his life. That's just, I don't understand how these cities manage to thrive as they have been when so many people are just knifing each other to death in the streets.
To that point, Abu Dar hasn't been thriving, and Altara has not been thriving.
Well,
you know, like...
I mean, they still have hundreds of thousands of citizens. They have a throne, although they don't really control much land. The Rahad is
a disaster,
a really good point.
But and also to that point, Abu Dar, at least in my opinion, is by far the most insane city. Like there's none of the other Camelin, Kyrian, Tyr, Ilian, like, you know, Farmatic, none of them even approach the level of insanity going on in Abu Dar. Like, it's
You give me a choice of one city in the Wheel of Time that I do not want to live in. I would live in goddamn Arid Hall. I would live in Shadar Logoth before I would live in Abu Dar. Like, are you serious?
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I know what you mean. Like,
but
I would easily live in, like, Tanchico, you know, or Tyr or Kyrian before I would step foot in Abu Dar.
I'd love to live in Tyr. Upper class, though, not in the mall.
No, I would live in the Mala instead of
you want to
Abu Dar.
Damn. Yeah, instead of Abu Dar, though. Yeah, definitely.
So
where are we? We got way off track there.
Matt. It's
everything. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's kind of like the three three sections of what's going on with Matt in this section of the book, where we have the Matt adjusting to like the culture and life in Abu Dar. We have Matt and his interaction with the Dark Friends, and then we have Matt and his interactions with the women around him, right? And I think where a lot of people get frustrated with this book is in the women side of things. Tylan is a major part of that, of course, and how obstinate Elaine and Nynaeve are up until Swovan Night about Matt. And yeah, I mean, we're like I think it's the next chapter we're going to read for the next episode is when they're finally going to come to terms and come to the grips with Matt. But you know, that's you know, something we'll leave for next episode. But leading up to that, it is very frustrating being in Matt's head and dealing with these people around him. Even though I think it's still a hell of a lot of fun to read from Matt's perspective. You know?
Yeah, and I wanted to say this is a perfect spot for me to confess this, but pretty much everything I wrote about, I had a few points that I wanted to discuss about Matt's character, but turns out I can't say them because I hadn't realized that I had already gone on one chapter past our stopping point.
Oh.
And I had a lot to say on Matt's front in chapter 22, but we actually stopped at chapter 21, so I'm looking at like 3 different points here that I'm just like, well, I guess I'll just save it for the next episode. And so honestly, on the front of Matt, I have nothing to say right now.
Okay. Well, I'll just continue on then and address kind of the Dark Friends situation in Abu Dar. I loved his little
chase,
you know, trying to track Millie Skane and White Plumes, and
he's forced to stop and buy a signet ring,
and not just a signet ring, but some pretty shocking symbolism on that signet ring.
Yeah,
a fox making 2 ravens. Like chasing 2 ravens into the air with 9 crescent moons around it, like.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't pick up on the 9 crescent moons. Yep. Oh my God. Oh, Jordan, you.
Well, yeah, and that plays in later on with the foretelling that Tuon is given. You know, with the beware the fox that makes the ravens fly. You know, like.
Oh, it just clicked.
Because she sees his signet ring. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, this whole kind of like chase, not chase thing with Millie Skane, and then we see Noal for the first time out front of Joachim's palace, whatever you want to call it. And then of course Matt is attacked later on by another Dark Friend. You know, the tendrils of the shadow are really, really creeping into Abu Dar, and Matt is, of course, as Ta'Veren, inadvertently at the center of it all.
And blissfully unaware. At the moment.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But let's...
Millie Skane.
Yeah. Or the Lady Shiane, if you will.
The Lady Shiane, yeah. I haven't really put those two together until I had read it a few times, but I really liked how Jordan approached Matt trying to place her in his memories. Like, why does she make me think of a dagger? And hay? Fire? What's
yeah.
And he's trying to think of like, oh, it must be one of these memories in my head from you know, other men's lives. But as we know, with this dramatic irony here, we've already figured it out long before Matt has. But of course, he figures it out pretty quickly.
Uh-huh.
But I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, Jordan bringing back a character who we had just obviously written off as, okay, well, we'll never see her again. You know?
Right. Well, let's move on to the Wonder Girls.
Okay.
Because I actually have some like fun things to say about them in this one.
All right, let's get started.
While they're you know, how do I put it? Like, while their attitudes toward Matt are still frustrating, their own activities in this are a lot of fun. And I especially like how Nynaeve ends up in this. She really gets taken down a couple of pegs, you know? And then Elaine and Avienda are, like, it's kind of fun seeing their friendship, like, building and...
progress, yeah.
And,
mature.
And then, I mean, Avienda in particular, I love the scene where they go see the sea folk. And Avienda's just like, what the hell?
Oh.
And then the sea folk are all like, what the hell? You know, and they have...
Everyone's like,
yeah,
what the hell?
they all have these wildly incorrect impressions of the cultures, the relative cultures there, and like, tons of fun.
Yo, I hadn't actually considered it that way. Yeah, the Aiel are like the exact opposite of the sea folk.
Yeah.
You don't have two cultures more different than those
Yeah,
two.
exactly. Yeah, and then we get to see some of the first, like, strange effects of the female warder bond between Elaine and Birgitta here, where Elaine is getting drunk because Birgitta is getting drunk with Matt. And, oh, man, and, like, that whole scene on Swovan Night right at the end there where they're, like, all hanging out in the room together, and Elaine is just acting, like, super hammered.
Yeah, she's just...
Like... Oh man.
Yeah.
That whole
really
Swovan Night chapter is just great. I mean, the scene with Matt and Birgitta, for one thing. You know, speak we what language, sounder of the horn, you know. And then Matt has this like unfolding of memory, and I love that.
They agree to keep each other's secrets. So that's some pretty cool stuff. The start of I did write this down here. I guess on Matt I can briefly mention the start of. And I'll call it a bromance, obviously, between Matt and Birgitta is just so much greatness going forward, and I really wish, I mean, knowing what I know going forward, I really wish we had more of this.
Yeah, we get a couple of scenes with them in this book, but really not a whole lot because, of course,
a little more in Towers of Midnight.
like, you know, Birgitta leaves with the rest of them in Path of Daggers, but we do get the one scene where they're like, like drinking at the little bar while watching, you know, in the second half of the book, they're drinking together and like scoping out like attractive or not attractive women or men respectively. Like,
yep. Matt just has to look towards the ugliest guy in the room, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, check that one out. Birgitta, what a character.
Yeah, tons of fun. But this particular scene though, I love Matt has the memory, right, you know, of the sounding of the horn and seeing all of the heroes coming down the clouds, and I love their conversation. Some of these lines, you know, like you know, he's like, you know, I weary of secrets, Birgitta, and they harbor secrets as a grain barn harbors rats. You know, they become Aes Sedai, eyes and hearts. Even Nynaeve is twice a stranger now. And she says, you have your own secrets. For one, you've not told them you blew the horn of Valir. The smallest of your secrets from them, I think. And he goes, what secrets do I have? Those women know my toenails and dreams. And she goes, you have the wrong end, Horn Sounder. I do not command them, blah, 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 blah. And as for your secrets, what language do we speak, Horn Sounder? And he just, like, stops and realizes what she said. You know, Sane, Iro, Gavane, Domorakoshi, Dienyan Dama Porvine. Speak we what language, Sounder of the Horn? The hair on his neck tried to stand. And he's just like, oh, like,
yeah.
What are you bloody well laughing at now? Like, oh, it's so great. Yeah. She's like, but you, one sentence, you're an Eheroni High Prince, and the next a First Lord of Menethrin. Yeah. Accent and idiom perfect. No, don't worry, your secret is safe with me. Like, I love that. I love that so much. I love
that somebody is around in Matt's life and his immediate vicinity to appreciate how badass he doesn't want to admit he is.
Yeah, like, so much fun. Just so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think that's about the end of my character notes for this segment.
I just wanted to talk about Cadsuane real quick and what she means, her introduction here. I was originally going to say this for my miscellaneous impressions, but, you know, I'm excited enough about Cadsuane here that I think she warrants a bit of brief discussion. She represents to me the biggest 180 I have ever done, perhaps with any character by any author, in terms of how I regard them. Because I used to hate Cadsuane. I hated her with a passion. I hated her almost as much as I hated Fael. I wanted her to die at every other page she was in, you know, when I was originally reading this for the first time, but now I love this character.
Really?
And I think it was a real stroke. I think it was a stroke of genius on Jordan's part to give us a character like this, someone who isn't particularly powerful in the current, and I highlight again current hierarchy of channelers because I know she is immensely strong, all other things considered. But someone who is strong of a character and who's made a legend of herself in her own right. Someone who's not going to take it from the Lord too arrogant for his own good, Alvear. You know.
So I still massively dislike Cadsuane.
Even like for the rest of the series as well. You just don't like her at all.
There are moments where like I respect her. And I respect her competence. She does some cool things
with Semirog.
I mean, that was hilarious. But things like how she handles the cleansing and stuff like that. But it is that arrogance, that self-importance that she carries. And yes, Rand is also arrogant, but the way she approaches it is so not the right way. And one of my personal favorite scenes is when she meets Tam. When Tam dresses her down.
Oh, okay.
Like,
right.
You know,
for being a bully. Right.
Yeah, because she doesn't change after that. She doesn't stop trying to be a bully after that. So I still dislike Cadsuane quite a bit.
I'm absolutely okay. She I agree with everything you said, but I don't agree with what it means. I think like Cadsuane, yes, she's arrogant in her own right. Yes, she's blatantly rude. But I think Rand needs somebody like that in his presence. He needs somebody. He doesn't want somebody like that around, but he needs somebody like that around. I think because we see him with a lot of very, very concerning behavior that's creeping out of his.
I disagree. I think she's making it worse, and that's. I mean, what we see him come to in the Gathering Storm is in large part because of how Cadsuane tries to handle him. It's not until he runs into Tam that he changes because somebody took a different approach to him. Like Cadsuane keeps driving him further and further over the edge instead of bringing him back.
Which is what Rand needs. He needed that moment atop Dragon Mount. That's the point I'm making. Like he doesn't like it, but he needs it. This is a lesson that he needs to learn.
I think
if it wasn't for Cadsuane, he wouldn't have gone to Dragon Mount.
This is a whole converation for like 8 episodes from now.
Yeah,
but no, I do not like Cadsuane. So we'll talk about her more as we go on. But
I'd also wanted to just pay respect here to one of the greatest and most shocking character entrances and introductions of all time. And fight me on this one.
Great scene.
The way she strolls into that room and just walks right up to Rand. He's trying to figure out who the hell this insane woman is. And she just walks up and bitch slaps him.
Yep.
That was so good. And Jordan uses this line here. Everything happened at once. You know, it really kicks off that scene. He utilizes this narrative trick that I've highlighted before, particularly with Moiraine, to instill the strength of a character not by demonstrating it, which with Cadsuane he clearly hasn't had time to do yet, but in how everyone around them reacts to their presence. Anura Sedai, she's gasping. She goes, "I thought you were dead." Then we have another Aes Sedai. I want to say it was Alana, might have been Marana, shouting, "No, Cadsuane, you can't hurt him. You must not." You know, it's just the way that everyone else reacts to her entrance is part of what makes it so stunning. And of course, Cadsuane managed to bitch slap Rand Alvear before even speaking to him. That was amazing. I just liked it. I don't know why. I don't know. It might be.
No, it is a good. It is a good scene.
It's just
really, really powerful moment. But yeah. So yeah, I will admit I don't really have much like lore stuff to talk about in this segment. There isn't much deep penetrating stuff going on here.
Well, okay. I just wanted to get one quick clarification for you then on one question I had about Egwene's dreams. If there's anywhere in the episode to ask, I guess this will be it. Though of course we get to this moment where she dreams of a golden hawk, and I wanted to get clarification on who precisely that golden hawk represents.
Right. Trying to so that was during the scene when she goes and meets with the wise ones, right?
The chapter Unseen Eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm trying to remember the quote. Let me see if I can like find it.
It was like chapter 10 or 11. 10.
Okay, yeah. So it's a golden hawk stretched out its wing and touched her, and she and the hawk were tied together somehow. All she knew was that the hawk was female. Huh.
Lylwyn, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, that would be my guess. That's where my mind goes to first.
Why a hawk?
I mean, the Shan-Chan tie-in. You know, the banner of Shan-Chan is like the Hawkwing banner, like Luther's banner.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
But yeah, that's the only thing I can really think of that might fit, because it's not Berylane.
No.
I mean, maybe you could make an argument for Tuon herself.
Sure.
But I think
Perhaps.
Aeginan makes more sense.
Yeah, Aeginan is probably... It's the only one I could think of that makes some sense.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered Tuon, but...
So, for any of our listeners, if you have a different idea, a better idea, comment on our...
or if you know the answer, if we're just forgetting something entirely.
Yeah, comment on our Facebook
possible.
page and let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. Cool. I've got some miscellaneous thoughts to get out of the way here. Should I start?
Sure.
Okay. Just want to take a quick moment to laugh at Elida's plan for the Black Tower in the prologue.
Yeah, so I just went and reread back through, and she sends 50 sisters and 200 soldiers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my god. That would be like a gecko trying to attack a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah, well, and it's even
hell?
funnier because in the actual scene when she's like, send 50 sisters and 100 of the Tower Guard. No, 200. As if it's like this.
Yeah.
Oh man, we're doubling the number of soldiers. And she has no idea that there's hundreds of Ashaman and thousands of men in the Legion of the Dragon all gathered outside Caemlyn right now.
We finally got our first point of view from Moradin.
Yes, we did.
Did we have it? I can't remember. Did we have it confirmed what his name was yet at that point? I don't think we did.
No, we first get his name, I believe...
At the end of Path of Daggers, I want to say.
No,
with the board, he's playing the...
No, doesn't he... There's the scene with Moghedien where he comes and gets her out of the vacuole in this book.
Oh, after the Korsuvra or whatever, the mind trap.
Yeah,
right?
it's in this book, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, chapter 25 is called Mind Trap, and it's Moghedien's point of view, and Moradin and Shaidar Haran.
Yeah. But in this scene in the first half, with this one single scene we got from him, we didn't get his name, but we still have some context. First off, he's managing to spy on Samael and Grendel and the Shadow Wise Ones. I mean, spying on the Forsaken, that's a feat in and of itself. But he also seems to have some context for what Samael is saying, how Samael implies that he is nameless after Grendel gets a little
uppity.
And then the unseen observer is thinking, okay, well that's a little arrogant and not correct, and you're just thinking, what is this guy?
Yeah.
Right. I laughed out loud at Loyal once again, taking notes during Colaver's dethroning.
Yep.
I loved it. I love that little detail that Jordan added in there. Just Loyal's still in the background, but he's still great every time we get back.
And we can say for sure now, we have a Loyal cast for the TV series.
Yes, yeah. Well, that just came out 3-4 days ago.
Yeah, so for sure the Ogier are not getting cut.
Nope, they're not getting cut, and I'm glad.
And neither is Tom.
Yeah. Who I was right about Tom Maryland. Sorry, I thought you meant Tom. No, okay. Yeah, I just want to point out though, during our Wheel of Time casting discussion, I was totally right. All right, totally right that Roose Bolton is going to be Tamalthor.
And I gotta say, I thought he would be a great Padan Fain, but the guy they cast for Padan Fain also
he looks menacing.
Super creepy. Like he's got the kind of face that's super friendly, but just the slightest change in it could be terrifying. Like
that uncanny valley. Yeah. You don't know why you're a little uncomfortable.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think they did choose well on that front. Let's see here, a couple more. We get the first time that Rand acknowledges the colors.
Yes.
When he's thinking of either of his two Taviran companions. Very, very big for the series going forward. Apparently, they started sometime during his time in the chest.
Yeah, I did pick up on that where he's like these like flashing colors, and for some reason they remind me of Matt and Perrin. Like what? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I already mentioned Rand cupping Alana's chin, her blushing healed me the way he just says it's so soft, like he's speaking to a lover.
I don't know, that's like super uncomfortable. Like,
really? I wasn't uncomfortable. I was just like intimidated. I was like, God.
Oh no, there's just something about like that relationship between the two of them, like the uncomfortable manner in how it began with her like essentially mind raping him, and then like
mind raping,
and then anytime there's like a sexual undertone to what they do, it just becomes more like ugh to me because of the foundation that it was built on.
I really enjoy the way that Jordan plays with that though, because it's like you get to see another side of the Aes Sedai with Alana, who's young and she's fiery and she really doesn't have control over her temper, right? But seeing her like kind of made uncomfortable, seeing her being shut up by somebody else, you know, even if it is Rand al'Thor, I don't know, I kind of enjoy those moments.
Like that side of things, yeah, it's always interesting to see like an Aes Sedai sort of discommoded in that way, but the manner in which it is done, like that like gentle touch on the chin, and like I don't know, it was just super weird to me.
To me, it just demonstrated a big power move.
So
I don't know. And my last point here, and this is gonna take me a minute here.
Okay.
I just wanted to give another nod to Chapter 2, The Butcher's Yard, because honestly, in my opinion, this is the moment where Jordan demonstrated not his ability to foreshadow, because he doesn't need to prove anything on that front at this point, or his ability to even set a spectacular, explosive climax, but just his ability to write a beautiful scene. Hammerstroke. You know, the way Perrin thinks of the dead, his responsibility. Hammerstroke. The imagery of the fresh graves and the Aiel custom of burying their dead upright, facing the sunrise. Hammerstroke. You know, you if you get the time and you haven't already, set aside 5 to 10 minutes and reread the beginning of this chapter again. And I have a quote here. To Perrin's eyes, the moon was nearly as good as the sun, but right then he wished for pitch blackness. Rand's face was drawn and twisted, the face of a man who wanted to scream, or maybe weep, and was fighting it down with every scrap of his fiber.
Yeah.
Jordan hit a note with those words right there that ripped my heart out of my chest, honestly. And I think going forward, this stands to be a top contender for my favorite scene in the entire series.
Yeah, wow.
And it's one that's really, really underestimated and kind of swept under the rug that people don't really think about when they're listing their favorite scenes and when they're totally getting the chance to nerd out over everything epic in the Wheel of Time. Remember this scene, ladies and gentlemen. It was a masterclass in verbal dexterity.
And once again, anytime I see people online being like, "Oh, Robert Jordan's not a very good writer," I'm like, "You're just plain wrong." Sorry.
There's no arguing with stupid.
Yeah. So I do have one kind of concluding thought before we get into the final draft, and that is the Forsaken are on the move. In these first like 3 chapters, we see Masana making some overt moves in the White Tower, teaching.
Why am I hearing March of Mephisto in my head by right now?
Nice,
right?
Nice. She teaches Alvear traveling.
Yep.
Dashiva Osangar is on the scene now. We see Taim doing his thing, and then Samael in Ebudar. Like the Forsaken are moving. Grandal and Samael once again are manipulating the Shido. Moradin is hanging around. Like we get a lot of scenes with the surviving Forsaken right now.
Yeah. We learned that Masana is in the White Tower.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So that was kind of my concluding thought. But on that note, it sounds like a good time to move into the final draft.
It does. I'll kick us off, I suppose.
Do it.
So I brought on a beer today that is one I mentioned actually in the last episode as perhaps the tastiest beer I've brought onto the podcast up to this point. And it actually did kind of work this week, thinking about, of course, Cadsuane's lessons that she has eventually to teach Rand. And this is good. Trust me, this does link, I promise, the fact that Rain hasn't lost his virginity, but he's taken that extra step with Min here. Keeping both of those things in mind, I have a white IPA here from a brewery called The Exchange.
Okay.
This is a white IPA. Again, it says strong beer, 6.8% alcohol ABV. I'm sure you've probably even today got something stronger than that. But this beer is just phenomenal. Everything out of the Exchange Brewery is phenomenal. It's a little more bitter. This is the white IPA. Last time I was bringing on just the New England IPA. But it's, obviously being an IPA, all your bitters are there, your grapefruit's there. But I swear to God, in this one, I'm tasting, I want to say it's banana.
It could be. If they have like a Belgian yeast strain in that, those can tend to produce like esters, which sometimes can have like banana flavor.
I'm looking at the back right now, centered around big citrusy hops, classic wit beer, spices of orange peel and coriander, and fermented with our house Belgian ale yeast.
Mm-hmm.
You nailed it, dude. You nailed it. So, that's what I brought. I brought the white IPA from The Exchange.
Nice. All right, and what was that called? It was just called...
It's just called white IPA.
Okay, so The Exchange was your...
Oh, wait, hold on.
Your thematic
I'm looking at the... Yeah, The Exchange was my thematic tie-in. Kat Swanee's lesson with Rand is an exchange going on there. Rand getting laid with Min. This entirely different kind of exchange going on there. So...
Okay. All right. Well, today I brought in a beer from 10 Barrel Brewing Company in Oregon. And it's a really good brewery, by the way. If you ever see any of their stuff, they got a lot of tasty beers. But this is a winter ale. And
what? A winter ale?
Yeah, winter ale. So it is very hoppy for a winter ale. Usually when you get like a winter ale, winter warmer, they tend to have like kind of a spice profile, usually a little maltier, sure. But this is very hoppy. It tastes almost more like an American red ale or something like that. But it's pretty good. It's 7%. Nothing like too crazy, but something to warm you up in the winter. And this is my ode to the group in Abu Dar who are trying to find the Bowl of the Winds and fix this endless summer. This beer is called Pray for Snow.
I like that. And I mentioned this before on that exact same subject with them in Abu Dar and what they're trying to accomplish. I have a beer that I cannot wait to bring on for Path of Death.
Nice.
It is perfect. It's perfect. Drew, it's perfect.
Okay.
It's almost as good as One Key.
Ooh, all right. Well, yeah, I think that brings us to the end of our episode, covering the first half of Crown of Swords. This has been episode 46 of the Inking Out Loud podcast. Next up, we will be going right back to the Wheel of Time and finishing up A Crown of Swords. If you want to get early access to that episode, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/inkingoutloud. In addition to early access, we have a couple of tiers. You can get our monthly newsletter. We do short Patreon-exclusive episodes covering short fiction and just general fantasy topics. Like we had, as Rob mentioned, an episode about Wheel of Time TV show and casting and things like that. We have a Cosmere reading order episode. And yeah, so if you appreciate what we're doing, you want to support us, check us out on Patreon. As always, I am your host, Drew McCaffrey, and with me is my co-host, Rob Santos.
Sup.
So, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.